Boom. What is going on? What is going on? Hello, everybody. Happy Monday to you. Hope you're doing well. If you're in the comments section, say hello. Want to give a big shout out, by the way, to everybody who's tuning in on YouTube. So you can actually catch this live stream on YouTube as well. And if you're catching on YouTube, hello, welcome. And of course, if you're in the Pod Houston Facebook group, thank you for joining me today. We're here at Podcast Influence Live, ladies and gents. As promised, every Monday, we're doing this thing called Message Monday. What is up, Facebook user? I see you. I just don't see. Apparently, you have to give StreamYard some permission to show your name on the screen. And let me see if I can catch you so I can give you a shout out. So let me know where you're tuning in from. Say hello. Cool. You love the wall color, huh? Yeah, this is pretty cool. I feel like it's on brand. The Pod Houston colors we actually use, and also the Podcast Influence, we use the orange color. So I'm like, hey, it just worked out that way, right? So I appreciate the love. Thank you for joining me today, and I'm excited. Oh, what's up, Nick? Nick Stevenson in the house, fellow podcaster, Pod Houston. Nick is, I'm excited to be on your podcast, my man. I think we have a date scheduled for April 28th, if I'm not mistaken. Believe so. So I'm excited to be on your podcast. You're doing big things, man. I'm so proud of you and so happy that you're part of this community. So we do this thing called Message Monday, and I'm excited to just share with you every Monday. I go live at 1 p.m. Central Time on Facebook, Pod Houston. So for our YouTubers that are not in the Pod Houston Facebook community, join us there. Amazing community of independent podcasters like yourself, making it happen, pro and up, sharing their message, humanizing their leadership, doing the thing. And for our Pod Houston community, if you have not joined Podcast Influence, head over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, like, show some love. Would love to see you there. A lot of weekly content. Every Thursday, I drop a brand new video. And let me give some shout out real quick. Oh, Brian Little. What's up, Brian? Wish I could talk. My man, I know you're at work. Catch this on the replay. Yes, hashtag replay. And you can post and share your thoughts and comments, questions in the replay as well. So this is a live stream. It will be available in the Pod Houston group and also in the Podcast Influence YouTube channel. So it'll be there for you guys to catch on the replay. And yeah, Nick says April 26th, we will be on the podcast. So I'm excited. Look forward to sharing that with all of you. So Message Monday, as I mentioned, we go live every Monday at 1 p.m. Central. I'm going to just share a message that I have with you. Every Monday, I'm going to show up consistently and deliver something that can help you on your podcasting journey, something for you to chew on and you can embrace or discard, or just an idea. I want to challenge you in your podcasting journey. And so that's how that works. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that this podcast, or this live stream rather, is sponsored and brought to you by Podcast Kaboom. If you're looking to start a podcast that blows away the competition like Kaboom, sign up for Podcast Kaboom. podinfluence.com/free video series. Get a 3-part video series that's for you directly into your inbox, and you get to see a case study of independent podcaster like yourself who is crushing it, and also some things that I want to share with you that will help you on your podcasting journey. So head over to podinfluence.com/free video series and get your videos today. So, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I'm excited. I'm ready to share with you Message Monday, the message for the day, and talk to you about the topic is how to humanize to monetize, right? Connecting the message um, to money. And one of the things, as many of you who have been following me on this journey and the content that I produce on Podcast Influence, I talk a lot about the importance of being you behind the microphone and really tapping in to your personal brand and what you represent as a podcaster. And some people get it twisted and think that I don't believe in making money um, in podcasting. What I don't believe in is, let me come correct, is I don't believe in people getting into this podcasting space for the sake of making money right out the gate or to make it a business. You can make it a business for sure. I mean, there's definitely resources and angles where you can bring it and make it a business. Not against making money. I'm all about making money. I do believe that purpose, passion, and profit. I do believe in the 3 Ps. However, I do believe in the importance of humanizing your message and humanizing your leadership by being authentically who you are behind the microphone. And today I want to share with you just a few ideas, a few things for you to keep in mind in your podcasting journey as you lead up to monetizing your message and what you should do to do just that. This is really interesting. I read a stat here. It is by Ozeal. I'm going to leave the link here, but listeners are more likely to follow companies and brands on social media. And the brand discovery on podcasts is just amazing to see that more than half of listeners are at least somewhat more likely to consider buying from a brand after hearing an advertisement on a podcast. I believe it's about 67% of people that are plugged into the podcast are more likely to buy the product or service if they hear it from the podcast host themselves. So that's powerful, which is the reason why a lot of brands and sponsorships and money is coming into the podcasting spaces, because they do believe and trust that the podcast host has cultivated trust with their audience, and they are, as the stats show, more likely to invest if they hear from the podcast host themselves. That's powerful, and that's the power of voice, and that's the power of podcasting, is that you do have the ability to really build an intimate relationship with your listener like no other media platform. And sure, you get it on blogs and videos, but as I've been saying, there's something about a podcast, something about listening and being connected with somebody through audio and listening to their voice that really connects you to a deeper level with the podcaster. So I thought that was really, really interesting stat. And here's a few things for you to consider in regards to how to humanize your message and your leadership and how to monetize it. I do believe that right now we're in the era of the personal brand. I believe the more you're in tune with yourself, the more you're in tune with what you stand for, your values, what you represent, the more likely you will build a deeper connection between you and your listener. So share more of who you are as a podcast host. I know with interview-based podcasters or podcast shows, formats, it's all about the guest, right? And you're trying to extract the information and present it and bring that value to your guests. But every now and then, I think it's important to fuse your personal brand and some of your ideas and thoughts and philosophies as a personal brand into the podcast. And you're going to interview, but you're also going to share more of who you are. What that's going to do is that's going to humanize your leadership. That's going to humanize your influence and build your influence for your audience. So it's important that you do that. One of the biggest mistakes that I made is that I made it all about the guest early on, and all of it was interview based, but I didn't share much about what I thought. And I didn't do it, through offset content like a live stream or a blog post or video. It was just audio and that was it. And although it took me quite some time for me to build that trust and get that attention from people to be like, hey, listen, we want you to talk about podcasting and what you do, I believe I could have gotten there quicker if I shared more of my values and what I represented early on. So if you are a thought leader, if you are a podcast host, if you're passionate, obviously, about the subject that you're sharing, don't be afraid to get behind the microphone and share why you're passionate about it, why you started this podcast, and what you represent and your values. I think it's super important. Also, just being open, being vulnerable, not being afraid to open up, in the lab and just say, hey, listen, this is what it looks like. This is what I represent. This is what I'm going through. Even whenever you drop the ball, let's say, and sometimes I went through this where I stopped podcasting, I went on hiatus and came back, and I got some emails, people asking me, when is the podcast coming out? Whereas what I should have done and what I suggest that you do is that if you decide to take a break, or if something happens where you can't show up for the podcast episode and you can't deliver it, show up on the next episode or release something, whether it's a live stream or, on your podcast, letting people know what happened. Like, just be vulnerable, just be open with what's happening. If you disappear and you don't let your audience know what happened, especially if you decide to take a long break, you definitely run the risk of losing them. So in order to cultivate that trust and build that listenership connection, it's important for we as podcast hosts to be open and to be vulnerable. Another thing that I would suggest as well to humanize your message is just by showing up consistently. There you go. By showing up consistently, being consistent with your message, being consistent with the way you deliver your show, all that matters. Once again, to build that trust, right, with your audience, and it's just super important, to be able to show up, and that's part of being human. I think not enough podcasters really lean into that, and that's super important in really building that audience. Another thing that you can do to humanize your message, and by the way, I'm going to check in real quick. Hold on 1 second. I'm seeing you. Good vibes. Thank you, Stephanie of the Healing Firm. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate the love. So another thing is especially when you launch a interview-based podcast, is, you make it about them, not about you. There's far too many times when I listen to interview-based podcasts and the interviewer is just dominating. You know what I'm talking about, right? Leave me a comment in the chat room. Let me know if you've seen podcast interviews or you've listened to podcast interviews rather, and just the interviewer is just dominating and they're doing more of the talking than the guest. In order to kind of humanize that, your message, you got to be able to make sure that you value your guests and value what they bring to the table. Part of humanizing your message is knowing when to step back and allowing somebody else to be the rock star. When you have a guest on your show, let them shine. Obviously, I know it's a conversation, right? It's supposed to be a dance, between the two or three or four, but it's more about them versus more about you. There's a time and place for you to be able to share, right? Your solo cast, to share your thoughts and ideas. But there's also a time when you do an interview-based show to really think about how can they bring value to your audience. I think it's super important in being human and not being so egotistical behind the microphone and just being real with it. I think it's vital to having and humanizing your message. Another thing that I will point out is that a lot of brands, when part of being real with your brand and being connected with it is being aligned with the brands and businesses that share the same values that you do. Remember, I just mentioned in the beginning that, more than half of listeners are at least more likely, 67% likely to purchase from the podcast host if the host mentions a product or service. That's powerful. And that's a responsibility that you have to be accounted for. And you don't want to align yourself around brands and businesses that are not aligned with your message and the core values that you represent. I remember coaching a client that early on got some sponsors. And I asked this person, I said, this is interesting because I coached him through, the website and developing the brand, et cetera. And then I started seeing other brands that I knew for a fact that this person was not using. And I said, this is interesting. I said, let me ask you this. I go, you're promoting and you're doing all this. Why are you why are you getting sponsors from businesses and software companies that you don't use yourself? I know that. And this individual said, well, they're the ones who are willing to pay. And I was taken back by that reply because I was like, yo, this is not, why aren't you going after the companies and businesses and brands that are aligned that you're using? Isn't that more aligned with your brand because you are using it and you have, tested the product and you believe in it, you want to share it? Is it a product that you don't believe? He's like, no, I actually love the product that I use. I'm like, well, then why aren't you promoting and getting connected and trying to get sponsorships from the businesses and brands that you are aligned with? Doesn't make any sense. And here he was trying to sell something from businesses and companies just simply because they were willing to pay him money. So what I'm trying to say here is when you are looking for sponsors, part of being real and being human and humanizing your message is being aligned with companies and brands that are aligned with your core values. Super important. Don't fake the funk. People will see that. He actually ended up losing a lot of his audience just because he really started going down a rabbit hole. And he's not in Pod Houston, so I don't have to worry about him. But he's a good dude. It's just he was chasing the money rather than being a podcaster that truly cares about his audience and making sure that they get the best products and services that he can recommend. So that's important. Let's see. We got some comments here. Boom, 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 boom. Stephanie says, yes, cannot stand egotistical host, but most don't know how to interview. Can you do a class? Well, Stephanie, I'm glad you mentioned that. Interview Kaboom is coming. So yes, Stephanie, that's a great point. We're actually working on something, a little secret project that's going to be helping podcasters with this big challenge, which is ego driven, and is also just lack of skill set. Right? We know that there's people who come into this space who don't have interviewing chops because they didn't go to journaling school or broadcasting school, and now they're learning how to conduct an interview for the first time, and it's a whole different skill set that needs to be learned. And being mindful of, and I talked about this on my YouTube channel, and I believe on this live before, just the importance of just being aware of the things that you're not good at as a podcast host. And I believe that if you have an interview-based show, it is essential for you to understand how to conduct a proper interview. There's a lot of consequences, like repercussions, if you don't know how to conduct one. For starters, if you don't know how to conduct a proper interview, the guest is more likely to just put that in the shelf and put it away and not really promote your podcast. But if you conduct a proper interview and you edify and show love and ask great questions, they are more likely to share that with their audience, which can give you some great marketing pull from that. It's important. So yes, Stephanie, I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a lot of that going on, and that's another topic we're gonna have to talk about pretty soon, is how to conduct a proper interview and the art of the interview, because I do believe there's an art form to it. So going back to what I was saying about aligning yourself, and the big thing is doing you, but what does that mean? And I think doing you is having clarity on what you represent, the type of guests you want to bring on, the vibe, being consistent, making it about them, not about you. And then something that's I've been seeing a lot in the podcasting space is that I see a lot of people trying to be like everybody else. Like I see a lot of copycats, a lot of people trying to be like the next big, Joe Rogan, or somebody's using this particular microphone. They want to buy it, and they just get caught up in all that. And I've actually seen podcasters rip off completely a brand that was successful, and they rip it off and they just change the name. You see a lot of that. And what I'm trying to let you know here is that in order to really build an authentic audience and build a tribe, you got to really do you behind the microphone, and you got to make sure that you deliver it the way you deliver it. And I think that's something that I always share with my clients in regards to being comfortable behind the mic and delivering that message. That's the thing that's going to make you unique. That's the thing that's going to make you you. And that's what's going to make your podcast distinctive and different from everybody else, is when you show up behind the microphone the way you're supposed to show up. So let's see 1 second. What's up, Janu? Insider in the house. She said, preach. I'm hopefully I'm not becoming too preachy, Janu. I don't want to preach too much. I feel like I do get on these little rants where I'm just going on and on, but I'm very passionate about this. And Janu has a great podcast, Ranting Through Life, which I was a part of. And, she delivered a great interview, and I'm so proud of her. So Janu, yes, you're part of the Insider. So, you know the deal, you know what's going on. So thank you for tuning in, Janu. I appreciate that. Appreciate the love. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to share with you just what was on my brain, what was on my heart in regards to just the importance of humanizing your message. And hopefully, leave me in the chat room, comment on in the YouTube channel. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what was your biggest takeaway. Let me know if this made any sense. I feel like I was ranting here for a bit. Did it make sense? Let me know. I'm gonna take a little swig of tea. Did it make any sense? What resonated with you? The gym. It's good preaching. Okay, cool. Janu says good preaching. All right. Well, hopefully, as long as it's good, and I'm not ranting here, ranting through my lives. There you go, Janu. Which is the reason why I love lives, because lives gives you permission, right, to just rant and just kind of go off topic and be random. Especially if you're a creative, you go off the well. Like, I was talking about interviewing and all that. It's important, but I love it. I love the questions, and I love talking about this. I think there's so much for us to kind of peel back and talk about. So thank you, Janu, for the love. Appreciate it. And let me know if you have any topics that you would like for me to talk about and that you would like to share. I got some ideas for Podcast Influence Live and what we plan on doing. We're really excited about that. We got a lot of things happening. We have some new members joining the Podcast Influence community, and Pod Houston ranting just shows passion. Hey, amen. That's true. That's true. Although when you interview, you have to be careful. I will say that's another thing that I'll probably add to the course, is whenever you do interviews, and I do it. I did it all the time with my podcast. Is just going on rants and just sharing and sharing and sharing. But you just got to be mindful. Like, oh yeah, we have an interview. We got to make sure we bring it back. We bring it back on track, and I don't rant on. So yes, but yeah, it's definitely passion. I definitely am. I'm very passionate about this, and I'm excited to be able to dig into different areas of podcasting that others are not. I think you hear online and on YouTube a lot of the how-tos and the marketing tips and a lot of things that a lot of the podcasters, podcast experts or gurus or whatever you want to call them talk about. But, it's very surface level. And I want to be one, because I think this way. I want to kind of dig deeper into the things that make podcasting amazing. And part of that is launching the podcast is one component, but truly humanizing your leadership is what I'm all about. Humanizing your message, building an audience. One of the things that I see, and here we go. I feel like I'm going to rant. Watch out. Janu, hit me up with the nah. That's when you let them rant and chat. That's right. That's right. You know what's up. You know how to do it. So I'm gonna say something here, guys. I'm gonna share something with you that's on my mind, and then I'll let you go on your day. So, you know, and this wasn't part of the message Monday, but I guess it's a bonus edition. How do I market my podcast? What's the best way to grow my audience? It's the same question over and over again. And we get that here in Pod Houston as well. But I see it a lot in other podcasting groups. And you're probably, if you're starting a podcast or if you're in the game, you're also wanting to grow your podcast. And I get it. I believe that when we're in creating content, you want to grow. You want to see your numbers grow, right? It's kind of like a business, right? You want to see your numbers grow. And I get that. But this actually also applies to business as well. So hear me out. So people asking the question, how do I grow my business? How do I market, etc.? And I started thinking about the question and I started thinking inward. I'm like, the majority of the marketing, there's social media marketing, there's the digital marketing component. There's obviously tactics that you can do to grow your audience by marketing your podcast more. But I challenge you to think about it this way. To take a podcast audit, whether you do it yourself or maybe have somebody who's really honest with you or hire a podcast coach, I'm available. But to really look inward and think about how can I make my podcast better? Because it dawned on me that a lot of these podcasters, and I checked some of them out that are really trying to market their podcast and grow their audience. And when you listen to the podcast, it's a no. Like it's not there. It's not there. I mean, there's no context. The interview is horrible. There's a lot of like missing components. There's a lot of brokenness in the podcast. And as a coach, the only thing I could think of is telling these podcasters, first fix that and that and that. Then you can think about growing your audience. Because at the end of the day, you can market as much as you can till your face is blue. All the tactics, all the social media marketing. But if you don't have if you don't have context, if you don't have essentials, if you are not looking to solve a problem and help your listeners overcome a challenge or bring them some sort of value in education or entertainment, it's just not going to work. Like it's not going to work. It's not, and I challenge you to think about taking an honest listen to your podcast and think about, where can I really make this podcast better? If you want to get a bigger, better audience, then up your game, pro up, get better at podcasting. You can start there. And you have good taste and you've listened to what sounds great. You can go to some of your favorite podcasts and listen and be like, well, this is what great audio sounds like. And this is what a great transition. And this is a great interview. And if you feel like you're not at that level, then practice, get better at podcasting. I think that's what makes a podcast really, what I've seen, make breakthroughs when they decide to pro up, when they decide to get around like-minded individuals that can help them step their game up, and they get better at the audio and they get better at the interviewing and they get just better overall. I've seen your marketing would change. I've seen people who will really up their game. And not to toot my own horn, but I had a client a couple years ago and we did that. Wanted to just market, go crazy, investing in all these digital marketing courses because he wanted to grow his audience. And all we had to do, I was like, pause on all this and let's work on this. And we worked on the rebranding, we worked on the strategy, and we worked on his interviewing chops, on getting that podcast tight. and concise and bright and really entertaining and fun. So we did all that. And then next thing you know it, the podcast went kaboom. See what I did there? Kaboom. Podcast kaboom. Cheesy, I know. Hashtag cheesy. So what we need to do is think about how can you make your podcast better? Because if you can make a few tweaks within your podcast, you will see results in the marketing and in people that organically will say, this is a great podcast. Like, this is a solid podcast. I want to subscribe and follow this podcast. I've seen it, guys. I've seen it many, many times. And it's not about having the best audio. It's sometimes not the best. You don't have to be all live stream. You don't have to be everywhere. You just have to be aligned with your core values, show up consistently, show up who you are, build skill sets that are going to help you as a podcaster become a better interviewer, delivering a great intro and outro, giving your audience a rock star experience. And trust me, you will see your podcast grow. I think that is the secret bullet. When people ask me, Ozeal, how can I market my podcast? I look actually at their podcast. I'm like, first, let's get that better. Like, it's not ready to be marketed. Not. So that's my rant for the day. That's the bonus of my message Monday. Janu, I blame it on you. This is your fault. But I just wanted to share that just because it was something that I've been seeing for quite some time. And I think it's important for us to share. It's important for me to share and not sugarcoat it and just let you know how it is from my perspective and from my experience coaching a lot of clients into their podcasting journey. So thank you. Somebody said, love it. I don't know who you are, but is this Nick? Nick, is this still you? I'm not sure if it's Nick or not, but thank you. And I know that could be very polarizing. Some people be like, yo, man, really, man? Really? You know, forget you, Ozeal. Like, my podcast is dope. I'm killing it, man. Forget you. And if you're killing it, then salute. But if you are struggling getting downloads, if you're struggling growing your audience, if you're all your focus is making money, then it's going to be a tough journey for you. It's going to be an uphill battle. You got to focus. You got to focus on building a brand, a real brand. You got to focus on building an audience, a real audience. Doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be 10,000 or 1 million. It could be 100 devoted, loyal listeners. And you won. Actually, you won with just having one loyal listener. But you have to cultivate that trust because that listener has 8 or 9 other podcasts they're listening to. So you can't fake the funk. You have to be aligned with your core values. You got to show up consistently. Be who you are. You got to be human. The more human you are, the more you humanize, the more likely you are to monetize because you have showed up authentically who you are. And once you build that brand authority, that brand trust with your audience, sky's the limit. Amazing things will happen to your podcast. And stop asking the question, how do I market my podcast? Ask yourself, how can I make my podcast better to market? Take a little sip. Let me take a little sip. Boom. Comments. Sage Junkie, thank you. What up, Sage? Good seeing you here, brother. Thank you for showing love on the YouTube. Janu, yes, take all of it. Take all the blame. Your fault. Nick is here, listening, taking notes. My man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Yes, my pod is dope to me, and I won't stop until I'm the best I can possibly be. That rhymes right there. And yes, my podcast is dope to me, but I won't stop until I'm the best I can possibly be. That's a wrap right there. I like that. Sorry, just came out of me. Gina, what is up? Legina from the Let's Talk podcast. What is going on? Good seeing you here. Thank you for joining me. That's right. Nick. Slick Nick. Jims. Thank you. Thank you for the love. Thank you. Thank you so much. Boom. Ozeal, spin the hot fire. Spin the hot fire to inspire, to ignite, help you take flight. I'm dope behind the mic. All right, let me stop. I'll do this, guys. I will do this. That's how I got started behind the microphone was spin hot fire. Smart advice technique. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And let me know, like I said, let me know what you think. I appreciate it. Dig into that. Again, I don't mean to ruffle some feathers here, because I believe the fact that you show up with your podcast, and don't get it twisted, the fact that you're showing up behind the podcast, I'm not saying you need to sound amazing right out the gate. Like, it's dope that you started your podcast and you're in the trenches. You and I know that this is not easy. Publishing content, showing up, marketing, doing all, getting guests. This is not easy, y'all. This is not easy at all. This is work. This is definitely work. So if you're not, I wasn't comfortable with the interviewing in the beginning. It took me some time. But just know that it takes time, and just being mindful of it and knowing that you want to continue having this growth mindset in regards to how can I grow my podcast and make it the best it could be. That way, I can be better at marketing this podcast because I'm proud of it. But you should be proud of it anyway. But you know what I mean. So props to you. And Janu, thank you for the message and motivation in your wonderful humanized voice. Thank you, Janu. Appreciate you. Appreciate the love. So, guys, I think that's it. I think that's a wrap. That's a wrap on my rap. No more rapping, Ozeal. I'm done. All right, guys. So, once again, thank you so much for showing up on Message Monday. Subscribe, Podcast Influence. Shout out to everybody who tuned in on YouTube. Leave me a comment, like, show the love, spread the love, spread the love, and share it. If you catch this in the Pod Houston group later on the replay, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it resonated with you. Want to challenge me. But I hope it made you think about your podcast, and because I want you to succeed. I want all of us to succeed. As independent podcasters, we have to stick together. I always say that independent podcasting is related to what indie musicians are. Like the way the record labels are already, Sony's and all that, they're rocking it. The Spotify, there's some, they're doing big things. NPRs, they're doing it. But what can we do as independent podcasters to support each other, to make sure that we give each other a platform and the education and the accountability and support to grow and level up together? I mean, that's what Pod Houston is about. That's what Podcast Influence Academy is about as well. So thank you for joining me. Speaking of Podcast Influence Academy, let me drop this on them. Boom. All right. So if you're interested, I'll leave you with this: Podcast Influence Academy, podinfluence.com. Click there and get all the information you need. We just launched a course called Podcast Kaboom, as I mentioned. And also, we have an accountability mastermind group. Actually, our accountability meetup is tomorrow. I'm excited. Always fun times at 6:00. So join us if you are interested in joining a group of independent, purpose-driven podcasters just like you, who are looking to pro up and build influence and make impact and income with their podcasts. So join Podcast Influence Academy today. And once you're added, I'll add you to our private Facebook group and also invite you personally to our accountability group and introduce you to these amazing podcasters in our group. So shout out to all the insiders. Shout out to Pod Houston, everybody who follows Podcast Influence YouTube. Thank you so much. My name is Ozeal DeBasto signing off. Love you guys. And we'll catch you next Monday for #Message Monday. Peace and love.